It's great weather today, and thank you all for coming, taking this time to be with us, to listen to the talk for today. And it's really nice to have you here. I talked a bit with Eddie here and Maria. Joe, right? Oh, I need to put on my glasses because I can't see. And Jing. Alright. So I'm going to be talking about talk number 7, the Christian family. Okay? And actually, Brother John had sort of summarized already the previous talk, which he did, and he was the one who did that talk. And I was going to ask you guys about that talk, but he already sort of summarized it. And because I normally would like to interact with the participants with regards to what they've learned about previous talks, right? And I'll just go ahead and go through my talk, but I hope that this is a sort of following that previous talk, which was talking about loving your neighbors, right? And the next one is now to talk about Christian family. Okay. So I know Brother John also sort of introduced my family, and I want to. So this is my family when we joined Couples for Christ. This was back in 2005. So my daughter has grown. Yeah, my daughter, yes.
She was the student in the Montessori school.
That's right.
I was
My
teaching
wife.
back in 2002. Is your mom here too?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. So my wife and I have been married, like Brother John had said, for 17 years. We've been married. 1998 civil wedding, and then 1999. That's when we got married in church. So. We've been in the community since 2005, so that's over a decade now, and I think that's probably one of the best things that we did to join Couples for Christ. Honestly, right? I'm not selling this because I'm not a salesman, right? I'm not trying to, right? I'm not trying to pull you in, but being honest, right? Just being honest. It's one of the best decisions that my wife and I have made, right, to join Couples for Christ. But anyway, so going to the talk. All right. So so in the modern times, in our time now, right, the family is really changing. There's many people who want to change the sort of the status of the family, how it behaves now. So there's many things attacking the family, right? I'm very sure just one look, just watch TV and you'll see how there are many forces which are trying to change the nature of the family. There are many problems right now with the family. One being divorce. The divorce rate is very high, right? They say that between 40 to 50% of all marriages within the I think first 8 years end up in divorce. Right? That's a very high number. And they say that about 67.9% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So, but I didn't make that. I didn't make that statistic, right? The first one, that 40 to 50% of all marriages, right, are bound to fail within the first 8 years. So, if you think about that, just think about that, right? We know that there's a lot of forces which are driving marriages apart. The other issue that we're having is, the redefining of marriage, right? Traditionally, it's always been between man and woman, but that has been redefined in our society, right? Now you have your same-sex marriage and all that, right? But who am I to judge, right? Even Pope Francis said, we don't judge. But the basic tenet of the family has always been the mother and father and the children. That's always been how it is. Another issue that we see is just living together, not getting married. Sort of, let's try it out. If it works, then we're good. Some people may not see an issue with that. Again, the teaching of our church is very, very specific with regards to that. Right? That marriage is really very important. That's the very basic tenet of our church. It's a very basic teaching of our church. The other one is, I would say, lack of communication in the family. We are very connected. Our world right now is very, very connected. You could talk to your brother and sister who's hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away. You can FaceTime your in-laws, your brothers and sisters who are in the Philippines, right? On a daily basis, you could see them. But it seems even with all that communication that's available to us, it seems that the family is not growing closer together, right? This little picture right here, maybe some of you resonate with this picture. Sometimes my kids would be there, they would be on their devices. We would be, I would have to accept, I would be on my device too sometimes, right? So all of us would be like, we're there, we're all there, but we're not connected, right? It doesn't seem like we're connected. So there are very many things which are besetting, our family right now. Right? Yes. All right, so I guess we'll talk about God's plan for the family. What is it supposed to be? What is the family supposed to be? What is the intention for having a family? And the very first one is for the transmission of life. There are very many kids born out of wedlock, sure, but in the church, right? It is noted that marriage is for procreation. That's one of the main reasons why we have a family, for the procreation of life. The church, of course, sort of looked down on children. Well, I'm not going to say marriage, but not. Let me point it this way. It's not something that the church kind of approves of. Right? So we would say that for the transmission of life, that is a very, very centerpiece of God's plan for the family. Okay. And if I may read from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 to 28, it says right there, so God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God He created them, male and female He created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the air, and over every living creature on the parent. So that's basically what is said, transmission of life. That's number one. What is the other role? What's the other plan for God, for the family? It is for the education of our children. Right? You may have, being parents, you notice that, you don't really have to teach your kids. I'm not saying kids are very, very intelligent. Right? They see and they would imitate. So whatever you do at home, if let's say, couples fight and they don't, fight it in private, maybe they would fight in front of their children. That's something that is ingrained in the psyche of the children. That fighting maybe is something that is normal, right? And sometimes you wonder, where did my kids pick up this bad word when they were little? You don't realize that you're probably saying that sometimes, right? And the kids just sort of pick up on what you're doing, right? So it is very, very important for parents to educate their children through their actions. It's through their actions that you would educate your children, right? So that the role of the parent, first and foremost, is to be an educator for their children, especially when they're very, very malleable. The time when they're growing up, that's the time when they pick up on a lot of things. That's the time when they you could sort of mold their values. So it is very, very important that you would show kindness, you would show respect. Those are the things that your kids, pick up from you. You don't have to, teach them formally about being kind, being respectful. Those sort of come, as they see you. There's a saying, monkey see, monkey do, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what children do. Right? They would imitate their parents, and they pick up on a lot of things from what you're saying, from what you're doing. So sometimes you may not say things, but you would act a certain way. Your children would pick those up. Right? All right. So that is very important, the education of our children. Making sure that we mold them into sort of God's image, into the kind of a good person that they should be. Right? And the next is, another plan for God is to be a domestic church. So when we say domestic church, right, what sort of image comes in mind? Joe, maybe you can say something?
Thinking of like a model of the church at home, in the household.
Yes. Yep. That's very good. Right. Maria?
Just pretty much what Joe said, emulating what you would expect to learn and to be exposed to in the church with your children, with your family.
Okay. Right. So God's plan for the family is to be a domestic church. Right? In our society, the family is the most basic sort of form of group, right? The family. Right? That is the very essence. And I guess in the modern times, right, a lot of people view equality, women's rights, right? But in a family setting, what we're saying is that the father is the head of the family. Right? There's a hold on. So on all right. So let me read Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, 8 and 9. Parents, especially the fathers, are to be the priests of their families. They present God to their families by their example of a living Christianity, right? By diligently teaching Scripture and by use of symbols. So that in itself, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, it doesn't even say that you have to teach your children Scriptures, right? It's by your example, especially for the fathers, they say. By your example, this is how you sort of show to your children, right? Being a good parent, showing the authority of the father, right? But there's in I guess our modern sort of setting, many times they would say that there's an actual Bible verse that says, you know, the father is sort of the head of the family, right? And the wife has to be subdued, sort of. But at the end of that verse, right, it would say there that the father has to love the family, right, and sacrifice for the family. So in the end, at the end of the verse, it would actually say that the father has to sacrifice for the family. It's not just him being boss, right? That's not how it works. Right? We know that that's not how it works. All right? So let me go to the next point. All right. So, says there, God's plan for families is not happening. All right, there was a missing word there, right? And God has lost His central place in the family. I mean, why is that? Right? What do you think? We're so busy living every day, right? That's God sort of taken the back seat. Right? 1 hour every week going to church. That's really very small amount of time if you think about it, right? To sort of give God the time that He, that is needed for God, that is for God, that's reserved for God. Just going to church, let's say on a Sunday. Some people, some families can't even do that. They're just, sometimes, they're too busy. Like, soccer practice here, and then whatever practice here, and then robotics here, and it just sort of piles up. Lots and lots and lots of many things, right? And we could all, I myself, right, can relate to that. But my daughter, she would go into robotics, and so much it would occupy like most of her time, right? So we have to be sort of creative in the way we sort of schedule our daily lives. Sometimes, things have to take a back seat, right? And I think that it's very important that that God has to be very central in what we do. The next is the family itself is losing its importance. I mean, it's very true, right? Because of the pace of modern life, sometimes we just sort of go on our own merry ways. We don't spend enough time with the family, and it just ends up as what we say we're family, but we seldom have time for each other, and that's very, very true. Right? The pace of modern life has become very fast, making it difficult for lasting relationships to develop. And again, because of everything that's happening all around us, because of all our activities and all that, we're sort of losing. We are together, but it's very, very difficult. We're not getting that bond together. And the other is the family is under attack by evil forces. So now, what are these evil forces? What do you think these are?
Yeah, it could,
Jane?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
It couldn't be really just the evil forces, or it could be the family gets divided because of different social and political beliefs. It's really
Very true.
big, and it developed into a deeper, resentment and those negative feelings towards each other, and awkwardness, and just feeling off about each other.
Brother Eddie?
I was just thinking about the media, TV, what we see on the news, what we read in the papers.
Exactly. Right? So much of that. Sometimes so much hate, so much vitriol talk out there. So a lot of that is causing the family really to break down. For instance, I'm going to talk about how some those pro-abortion people have become very, very, very aggressive in the way they attack. Right? So those are causing breakdowns in the family. Right? So what can we do? What can we do? So very, very first thing is we have to make a decision that you want God's plan to happen. I think it comes from that very first decision to say, I want to have a good family. I want my family to be God-fearing and loving. Right? If you don't make that conscious decision, you're just going to be going through, you're just be going through the flow of, the current society, and you'll be swept up by it. Right? So you have to make that conscious effort to really try to build your family according to what is planned by God. I guess rather than me talking about what we need to do or what we can do, I'm gonna ask my daughter to talk about what she's seen us do as parents, right? And what is her experience, what her experiences are. I think it's better if it would come from my daughter than just me talking about it. So that little girl is now a very, very big girl. So
She's bigger than you.
she's now a lady,
A young
I would say. She's now a lady. So Joel would now talk about the next 2 points.
You lied a little when you said big. I'm like 5 feet tall. Well, hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
My name's Jarell. I'm my dad's eldest daughter. I'm also a junior, and yeah, I've heard a couple scary things about junior year. Like there's SATs, and then they're saying that's like the most important year, and that's the ones that colleges are gonna like look at the most. And I mean, so far it's true, it's really difficult, and I mean, sometimes that'll like get in the way of trying to balance like family, trying to balance that with school and like your extracurriculars. And yeah, it's really difficult because our schedules don't really don't really coincide a lot, and a lot of times, I'll come back at like 9 and my dad and my parents will already have eaten or whatever it may be. So we have to find like that good balance and that good like medium between when we can like spend time with one another and then like get the work done. But we try to like make it a point every day for just like 15 minutes or so to pray the rosary, and whether it be like in front of the altar or like in the car, like going to my sister's like soccer games, we try to make sure that we just sit down and try to give some of our time to God. But even though our schedules are a little hectic, we try to eat dinner together, and I look forward to that most of the time, as long as my mom's like making some good food. Because then we get to like talk about our day, and I get to hear some like stories from my dad or like my mom or my sister, and usually they're pretty funny. But yeah, weekends are kind of hectic, and then once you get to, or weekdays are kind of hectic, and then once you get to weekends, that's a little more chill. We get to, sometimes we'll volunteer. We'll volunteer at the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. It's up north a little bit. Or we'll make like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at St. Greg's, which is like one of my favorite things to do with them in terms of volunteering. But Sundays are reserved for Mass, and we'll go for like an hour at St. Greg's, whether it be like at noon or just like a little later, depending on our schedule. And we'll go to Mass like even on vacation. But a lot of our vacations have been with like the CFC community, and I've like some of my best friends are in like the CFC youth or like CFC community, because we're like always together, and it's such a fun time. Like you really create like these really strong bonds with them, and I can like definitely say that CFC has definitely like helped us shape like the way our family lives and just our like family life in general. And we'll on the weekends we'll find time to like bike, or we'll hike, or like go see a movie together. And we might not be able to spend like every minute together, but I can definitely say that they're like there for me, even if they're not there all the time. And that's it. Yeah.
I surprised my daughter actually. But what time did I tell you?
12:30.
I told her, like, why don't you, say a few things just to tell, you guys how, we shaped our family. And I think it's very important that it comes from a daughter, the way I see it. Who better can show you how we are building up our family, but by actually having my daughter do it, right? So I think like she mentioned, right, we have to make time for building our family, and you can be creative about it. There's many things you can do about maybe there's things that you can forego, or put in the back seat. Maybe you spend a little less time maybe on the internet, less time watching TV. Just take a small chunk out of that and dedicate the time to sort of bond with the family. I think that is very, very important, especially for children, especially for young kids, because that's the time when actually they're really, really malleable and you can really sort of mold them. So I think that age, while they're growing up, I think that's the important time that you actually mold them, right? Again, she mentioned about praying together as a family, doing rosaries. Actually, if we go on vacations, well, we take the time, right? Even on a Sunday, right? That we find a church close by, give thanks to the Lord for the grand time that we're having, right? Sort of give God His due, right? So actually, well, it says there, the next bullet, fathers should take steps to assume full responsibility for spiritual and material needs of the family. And I'm going to read on that scripture I was talking to you about earlier, Ephesians chapter 5, verses 20 to 25. And many times, people sort of take this verse very literal about submitting. So I'm just going to read it. Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Right? That's that verse 22. But on verse 25 it says there, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So I think that's the very powerful part, that very end there that says the husband, would sacrifice for the family. So now who's the boss? If the father has to sacrifice for the family, right? So I think many times that verse they just take that very first part and not tell the end part, which is the most important. So yes, definitely that's the role for the father, that the father should take, with the help, of course, of the mother. Right? Definitely, it's not just a singular role that the father should take. It also has to be the wife. Okay? What's next? Learn about God's plan for your family. Now, there are many ways you could do that. If you so decide to become part of CFC, right, to join CFC, we have many teachings. We have what they call a marriage enrichment retreat, and there's 3 of that, right? Three different. Yes, MER 1, MER 2, and MER 3, where they're very in-depth sort of teachings, that provide more information about marriage. When we went through the first one, right, we were thinking like, we've been married for some time. You sort of, there's not a lot that we can really learn. We're sort of skeptical a bit, but there are people that married like 40, 30 years, and you would learn from them, right? Definitely learn a lot from those people. That knowledge from other people in the community who've been through more battles than you have. I think that's very important, that you get sort of that you get that experience from them, right? The other thing that we can do is seek other couples who share their concern about family life and be in regular fellowship with them. So we can say that in Couples for Christ, right, we all share the same values. Right? We all share the same values. We all, believe in God. We have this common sort of in the community. You understand each other. You sort of know what the community is all about, and that's where you all grow. You share the same concerns, and I think those things make the family stronger. They definitely did for us, for our family, right? And as I mentioned earlier in the first part of my talk, that joining Couples for Christ was one of the biggest, most important things that we decided to do, my wife and I. And I think that it may be the same for you. Hopefully, if you so decide to join Couples for Christ, that it will have the same sort of impact for you guys as it has impacted my family. Then in conclusion, right? So, in conclusion, the Holy Family of Nazareth is our model. So it would be Mama Mary, Joseph, Mama Mary, and Christ, Jesus. That's the sort of model that we would like our family to sort of be molded to. God has a plan for our families, and that is to make our family sort of a stronger family, to prevent, it being broken apart by evil forces. And we've discussed what those evil forces are. The other is that we need God. Right? Prayers. We definitely can't do this alone, right? I myself, right? My family, we believe in a higher being, that we're not just spectacles, we're not just statistics, right? That we are, special in the eyes of God, that God made us, sort of has a plan for us. And how do we do that? How do we communicate with God? We pray. So that's my talk for today. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Tolits and Jarrell, for sharing.